Five Nights at Freddy's merchandise was basically all done by Funko for pretty much 10 years. But eventually Scott Cawthon took away their master license after they made some very bad decisions and gave the master license to Jazzwares, who is currently starting the Five Nights at Freddy's merch scene again. So in this video, I want to have a quick look at the Five Nights at Freddy's merch scene when it was under Funko's control, have a look back at the good and the bad of Funko's time ruling Five Nights at Freddy's merchandise. So in around 2016 to 2017, Funko acquired the master license for Five Nights at Freddy's merchandise. Previously, we'd seen Five Nights at Freddy's merch for the first time, mainly with sand cheese plushies. They were really good. A lot of people really liked the quality of them. They were definitely more on the expensive side, but they were really good quality, and they even go for crazier prices today. Now these, I believe, were only available online. I don't think they made it into like GameStop or anything. Maybe they did, I don't remember, but I don't think they did. But what did make it to stores were these danglers. Yeah, these backpack clips with these really weird, very exaggerated stylized designs. These were really hated when they came out, but they still stuck around for a while, and nowadays I think people are 50-50 with them. Some people look back at them with nostalgia, some of them look back at them still with a lot of hate. I personally saw these a lot in stores back then. I didn't buy any of them, but I was always kind of fascinated with them. Like, I thought they were weird, of course, and really ugly looking, but they were just, like, fascinatingly weird. They were, like, interesting, if that makes sense. I didn't buy any of them, like I just said, but I did get gifted one of them for Christmas, and I do have that footage of me opening it still. And who was it?
Who is it? It is?
Oh my god!
It's got a super rare one!
Yep, I got the chase figure. It was the metallic golden Freddy, so I'm really happy with that. I still have it. So a lot of memories and nostalgia with that. We also saw the company McFarlane make construction building stuff, basically Legos, of Five Nights at Freddy's, and they continued pretty much for the entire time as Funko's run of Five Nights at Freddy's alongside them, I guess. And these were pretty good. It's just the quality of the plastic was a little bit bad, the clutch power on them, but they were okay. But then Funko got the master license, so they were able to put out plushies, figures, pops, mystery minis, and a couple other things. We would also see many store exclusives made by Funko for this entire Five Nights at Freddy's run. And they started out pretty strong, and they were very well received for the most part. And I say for the most part because there were a couple issues with them. There was a couple inaccuracies, mainly with the figures having upper teeth when they really shouldn't. Some of the colors were a little bit strange. Funko had this weird fetish for putting a stripe on Freddy's hat molded in, even though he never had that. Only Toy Freddy had that, and it was colored in, so that was really strange. And they also reused the molds a fair bit, like with Golden Freddy. They just straight up repainted Freddy into Golden Freddy without changing him at all, which is fine, but you'd think they would make him have an open jaw, maybe hold out the eyes. They didn't do that at all. And something I didn't even realize until very recently was that the Bonnie figure just straight up used Freddy's head with just different ears. And I always thought it looked a little bit off, but after looking side by side of the Freddy and Bonnie figures by Jazzwares and Funko, and also of course them in the games, it's very clear that Bonnie is quite inaccurate, and I'm surprised I never figured that out sooner. And these figures' joints were very loose, they would just pop off instantly.
Oh, it's like a marionette doll without his loose limbs.
Instantly, they were very loose, they could not stay together at all. Luckily, this was fixed in the later waves, and in the later reissues of the first classic Five Nights at Freddy's animatronic wave. But I do think the positives mostly outweigh the negatives, and people really liked them for what they were. The same thing happened more or less with the pops, the plushies, and the mystery minis. A lot of them had their issues, but the positives outweighed the negatives for the most part. So this time period from around 2016 to 2017, this for me was probably the peak of Five Nights at Freddy's merchandise with the initial waves. I love seeing these in a bunch of stores like pop culture ones, specialty stores, and of course also in Target. I didn't see a whole lot of them. I remember seeing them definitely, but I think it was only Chica that was on the pegs. The others were just sold out. I didn't really see them. But this 2016 to 2017 era of Five Nights at Freddy's merch, this was probably the, like I said, the peak. I think I really liked this era of Five Nights at Freddy's merch. But as time went on, more issues started to arise, the quality started to go down, and the selection started to get worse. So that wave was all the original Five Nights at Freddy's 1 animatronics for the most part. So you would expect them to move on and do the second game with the toy animatronics and the with it animatronics. But nope, they did the Nightmare animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's 4. And yeah, the merchandise of the Nightmare animatronics was really cool, but we didn't get the toy animatronics really, what everyone wanted. We only got Fixed Mangle, Funtime Foxy, just randomly thrown in there as a part of the Nightmare wave, when they never appeared in any of the mainline Five Nights at Freddy's games. She only appeared in FNAF World, so I don't know why they just put him in this wave for like no reason. Now, like I said, the Nightmare animatronics merchandise, they were well received for the most part. They had some issues, but they were still pretty good. But that doesn't really apply to this wave of the plushies. Now, they did do the toy animatronics in this wave, but there were a couple issues with them. Some of the quality issues, some of them just looked weird, some weird materials. And man, that also applied to the Nightmare animatronics in this wave. They were basically just the FNAF 1 animatronic plushies, just remade with some extra details on them. They were just really ugly, and oh man, they looked weird. Now, with the mystery minis, alongside the nightmares in that wave, was also the sister location animatronics. And the sister location animatronics would soon receive figures as well, and they were pretty good. Again, same thing as the Nightmare animatronics, there were a couple issues with them, but the positives outweighed the negatives, and they were pretty well received. But just like the Nightmares, where the action figures were pretty good, the plushies were pretty bad for the most part. I mean, a lot of them just had printing on them. They weren't actual dyed fabric. It was very strange. Ballora looks ugly. Baby looks a little bit weird. I think Baby, at least, is kind of saved by the fact that, just like Funko's ugly Chica plush, the plushies in the games eventually used the Funko designs of Circus Baby, at least for the head. So I guess that kind of saves it, but still, this looks very strange, and that does not save the rest of them. Funtime Freddy with Bon Bon, like, Funtime Freddy's face looks so weird, Bon Bon looks horrible, and I get that they're trying to save on production costs, but they look so ugly, man. Funtime Foxy is probably the best looking out of all of them. It's just the printing on them instead of just the actual separate dyed fabric, I guess, if that makes sense. And the eyes, they're not bad, they're just very different from what we're used to. Warbit was just a recolor of that Funtime Foxy plush, but I think it was a little bit better. The GameStop exclusive Bonnet plush was pretty good. It was in the style of the earlier ways without much printing. And also the Exotic Butters was a really good plush, and I do have this one. It's crazy how expensive it is on the secondary market nowadays. So after this wave, a lot of people were expecting Funko to go back and do figures of the toy animatronics and the with it animatronics, because they did Funtime Foxy in that last wave with the Nightmare animatronics. Well, then we got merch of the Twisted animatronics from the new novel at the time, The Twisted Ones. And the wave of the mystery minis were pretty good. Maybe the quality was a little bit lower, but the plushies were really bad. They look like knockoffs, man. Look at them. Now, I should say, between the different waves, between the different lines, the different groups of the animatronics were released at different times. So, for example, like the mystery minis got sister location first because it was a part of the Nightmare animatronic wave, whilst the Nightmare animatronic figures came first, and then the sister location figures came out after that. I've tried to bundle them all together, but it gets really confusing. And also in between all of these were a bunch of other recolors, Blacklight, Glow in the Darks, and these were pretty bad. They were not received very well. It was very clear these were cash grabs, especially with the Blacklights. They felt very gimmicky and no one really wanted them, and they were originally going to be a similar case to Funko's Chica and Circus Babies plushies where they appeared in the games in Help Wanted, but the Blacklight animatronics were cut from the game. They never made it into the final version of Help Wanted. So after all of this, we eventually got the wave of Pizzeria Simulator animatronics. Now, a lot of people were expecting them to do one wave of the set of Rockstars, one wave with the set of Mediocre Melodies, one wave with the set of the Scrap animatronics, stuff like that for the figures and the plushies. But what they decided to do was just take a couple from each of them and just release one wave of them, and that was it. They did not complete any of the full sets of animatronics from the game. It was just a couple select few. The plushies were probably on par with the quality of the Sis location wave, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse in some areas. It looks like there was some reuse from some of the older plushies, like the patterns or whatever. As for the figures, they were all right, but they were riddled with inaccuracies and reused parts. Like, you could definitely tell, especially if you had some of the older figures, if you looked at them side by side, you could definitely tell what parts were reused for this wave, and it was very frustrating, especially, for example, when they took Rockstar Freddy and just straight up repainted him to be Lefty, so Lefty wasn't even left-handed anymore, it was just the same as Rockstar Freddy, and Lefty had some other minor changes from Rockstar Freddy, but they didn't do any of those because they just straight up repainted Rockstar Freddy for Lefty. So the next wave after that was based on the new upcoming game at the time, which people did not know any details really of the game, what the title of the game was. That was until Funko ended up leaking a bunch of stuff through early posts for the merchandise, product listings, and other leaks. So Scott was pretty mad at this, and the only thing he really said is that things will be very different moving forward. And what was even worse about all this is that the designs for, like, the figures, they're really bad. They look nothing how they ended up looking like in the games. It was very clear there were many reused parts for these, many retooled parts. They looked pretty bad, and this is one of the most hated, if not the most hated wave of Five Nights at Freddy's figures made by Funko. The plushies were no better as well. They look pretty bad. They almost look like knockoffs. They look really ugly. They don't look like plushified versions of their game selves. They just look like knockoffs. The mystery minis were probably the best, but even then, the whole wave was just filled up with a bunch of random other slots because they didn't have any other characters to put in. So you got like blacklight versions of them and just some other random versions of the characters, some other random variants. So after all this, you'd think Funko would have a hard reset and then eventually do figures of the toy animatronics and withers from the second game at last. What they decided to do was do a bunch of stuff from the previous game, Help Wanted, which is okay, some of them range from good to bad, but they also decided to do a bunch of random skins from Five Nights at Freddy's AR, the mobile app. And yeah, the quality of them were alright, they're pretty good. I'd say they were on par with some of the early waves of like Location and the Nightmare Wave. But again, like with the other waves, why are they making these? Especially with these ones, these are skins from a mobile app. I like FNAF AR, but still, why are they doing these random skins? Is it because it's in the latest game or something? Is it because they think they're going to be more popular? Why? And what sucked even more is that they did skins of the toy animatronics from FNAF AR, but they didn't even do the original normal toy animatronics first before them. And then after this, it started to crash down. They did a bunch of random holiday stuff. They did a couple other circus stuff, and they had new molds, but why are they putting resources and effort into these random stuff that we've never heard of before? People thought some of these stuff, this circus stuff, were from an upcoming new game, but that just never happened, so these were just random designs. And it soon became apparent that Funko was going to lose their master license for Five Nights at Freddy's merchandise. So what they did was, at least they decided to go out with a bang. For the 10th anniversary, they released these new style mystery minis, and they were really cool. And they did Ruined animatronics from the Ruined DLC for Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. And man, these figures look really good. Probably some of the best, if not the best, figures made by Funko. And it's very disappointing that these came at the very end of the lifespan of Funko Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, throughout Funko's merchandise run of Five Nights at Freddy's, basically, we did see a couple restocks throughout the times, or re-releases I should say, mainly with the original Five Nights at Freddy's wave. I think those were the only ones that got re-released. Maybe the Sister Location, the Nightmare ones did, but I don't think they did. But years after that first wave of Five Nights at Freddy's plushies, they eventually restocked them and re-released them, and that included the store exclusives of Golden Freddy and Shadow Freddy, but people kept scalping them apparently. There were a lot of people going in and just buying all of them and then reselling them for a profit. I don't think this was a problem back then. I was probably too young to ever find out if there was, but I don't remember if scalping was a problem back in 2016 when these first wave of Five Nights at Freddy's merchandise came out. I don't think there was. If it was definitely not to the degree it is nowadays, or when those restocks happened with the Golden Freddy and Shadow Freddy plushies. But as for me personally, I probably had a very different experience with Five Nights at Freddy's merch compared to a lot of people, at least watching this video. I think a lot of people probably saw a lot of these in stores at Target, at Walmart and all that. I only ever saw the original first wave in Target, and maybe some of the mystery minis at Target and the plushies. I remember seeing the pegs, the empty shelves. I only saw a couple cheekers on the pegs. I remember I really wanted to get Golden Freddy back then, but I just never saw him, so I was never able to get him. I don't remember how expensive they were compared to, especially nowadays, how expensive they are or how cheap they were. Judging by what I can find online, I think they're around the same amount as the Jazzwares figures that are currently on shelves right now as of recording. I think they're around the same, maybe a bit cheaper, maybe a bit more expensive. But I think in at least my area, they were probably more expensive, I think, because I never seeked out to get the whole set. I know I really wanted them, but I think they would have been too expensive to get the whole set. So I don't know. But I do think they were probably worth the money. The same thing goes with the plushies. I don't really think I saw many of the plushies. I definitely saw, I think, Wave 2 or Wave 3. I remember seeing the Nightmare ones and, like, the Toy Cupcake. I think I saw Wave 2 with, like, yeah, like the toy animatronics and all that. And I think I saw those alongside the mystery minis at, like, pop culture stores, at specialty stores. I never saw them in Target after that, I think. After that initial first wave, I never saw them. And at those specialty pop culture stores, I don't think I saw any of the other Wave 2 or Wave 3, the Sister Location or the Nightmare waves. I think I saw some of the Pizzeria Simulator ones, but I don't remember them too much. I do remember seeing the mystery minis for the FNAF 4 and FNAF Sister Location wave. I brought a couple of those, but I didn't get any of the other ones. I think I wanted some of the Pizzeria Simulator ones. I think I did see a couple of them, but they were probably too expensive at the time, at least. I'm not sure how much they are. It really depends on where you live, depends what country you are, what area you were in. Some places have more of them, some places don't have them at all. Some places have them, but they're very expensive. Some places only have very few of them. So maybe my targets did have Five Nights at Freddy's stuff, but I just stopped looking because I just assumed they just completely ditched Five Nights at Freddy's because I never saw any Five Nights at Freddy's merch there ever, aside from the books, of course. But overall, what do I think of Funko's time with Five Nights at Freddy's? I'll probably speak more about this when I talk about Jazzwares, but I think that it was alright. I think they had some really good stuff going on. They had some pretty bad stuff going on. The main problem came with the selection of what they decided to make and put out there, and just Funko's laziness to just reuse molds and all that. They just reused the same molds, just put out very basic recolors, retooled versions of the classic animatronics into like holiday skins or whatever. And the quality of mainly the plushies, they suffered the most. They treated so poorly throughout pretty much the entire run. Even from the start with like Chica, she was done really bad at this from the start. Oh man, it's very disappointing. But when Funko did do really good, they did really good, and I'm really happy with how some of the stuff they did came out at least. So there's that, and I guess overall there was a lot of really bad, and then there's a lot of really good in Funko Five Nights at Freddy's. I personally feel like there's not a lot of stuff in the middle range. There's either a lot of stuff at the top, or near the top, or a lot of stuff near the bottom. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. I'll see you guys in part 2 where I talk about what's going on with the current Jazzwares stuff. Bye.